Hi, I'm Kyle Tester. I'm the orchard manager at Wilson's Orchard and Farm, here with Yura today, and we are going over pruning. So pruning is what takes up a large portion of the winter work out here at Wilson's, and it's very important to maintain the overall health and productivity of an orchard. So I guess to start, maybe we should just go over why prune in the first place. And there are several things we're looking for when pruning. We want to increase light penetration into all portions of the tree. We want to maximize airflow through the tree. We want to manage the crop load a little bit, and we want to control and manage tree vigor. These trees behind me are what are called semi-dwarf, so they are on a rootstock which reduces the size of what an apple tree would want to be on its own roots to about 50% or so of what a full-sized apple tree would be. So that's already part of what we want, is to keep the size down and manage. But anyway, even these semi-dwarf trees, what they're going to want to do is create, like that elementary school drawing of a tree, just kind of full round. And what you end up with is a lot of apples, but they're all just at the outside of that sphere. And then you have, on the interior of that, you have 20 foot of dead space from end to end or whatever, where there's no apples being produced. Now, that's fine for an apple tree left to its own devices out in the wild. But here, and any of you with an apple tree in your backyard, we are looking to maximize all the space we have. We want to really thin that out so light can penetrate the entire area of the trees. A main objective of pruning is to just get light deep into the tree so we have a productive tree all throughout the space it's occupying. This will also increase airflow, and airflow is important to minimize fungal and bacterial, but mainly fungal diseases. So if you think about a shaded out full-size tree on the interior there, if you get a rain event or humidity or whatever, the air can't get in there, that is going to stay moist, very humid, just the perfect environment that fungus are looking for when they're attacking apple trees. So we want to open it up to minimize those fungal diseases as well. Another thing we're looking to do is to remove excessive vegetative growth in favor of fruit growth. So on an apple tree, as you kind of look at it, we're looking for these big fat fruit buds that come off of things called spurs, and we're looking to get out this excessive vegetative growth that will just shade and reduce fruit quality. So, and when you're vegetative growth, the buds are much thinner and kind of tucked in, and vegetative growth is most often found on branches growing straight up. So these branches growing straight up, they're trying to get to the sun as quick as they can. They're not that concerned about fruit at this point. All they're going to do is shade the fruit buds that we want. Another thing to mention is we are on what's called a central leader training system. In the central leader system, we are looking for just one single leader to come up on the top of the trees. So apples, a lot of their growth is controlled by a hormone called auxin, and this is found at the tips, at the terminal bud of these apple trees, and it flows downwards and kind of inhibits side branching. So if we can get one strong leader up there, it can kind of suppress and control some of the excessive upright growth in other part of the tree. And a good illustration of what happens when you lose that auxin control is found on this tree behind me here. So you can see, if you look deep in this tree, on this tree here, you can see we lost that central leader at some point. It looks like it died and we took it off. Since then, we've been trying to train this branch up here, but it looks like it wasn't strong enough and vigorous enough for that auxin to kind of control some of the other growth. And if you look around, all around this tree, we have a bunch of just straight up growth trying to take over that leader position. There's no real auxin controlling the breaking of buds here, and everybody's trying to get up. And this is just not going to be efficient in terms of getting light into this tree and having a productive tree all throughout. Now that we know a little bit like why we're pruning, kind of what we want, let's talk a little bit about the structure we're trying to achieve. So I did talk about a single leader. I'm going to use this little thing that Yura clipped off here just to kind of illustrate. So especially if you have a young tree, this might be helpful. So we want a single tree with a single leader. What it should look like when we're done is almost like a Christmas tree or a pyramid. So narrow at the top, wider at the bottom. And that's to maximize the light getting to the bottom branches, what are called scaffolds of the tree. And as we go up, they should get shorter and shorter just so the light can get all throughout the tree. And then the tree should look like, if you were a bird flying above it, it should look like the spokes of a wheel. So these branches that are coming out are not directly over the ones below them. They are kind of evenly spaced, again, so everything can get as much light as possible. Light is the most important thing we're thinking about while we're pruning here. So we got a young tree. You want to start that bottom whorl of scaffolds about 3 foot up, 2.5 to 3 foot up. That's to get them enough off the ground that they can get light and airflow. If you have apples hanging down on the ground, that's just begging to be attacked by insects and diseases. So you go about 3 foot up, bottom of the pocket or so, just above the knee, and you're going to want, like I said, here we're working with mainly 2 on these, but you want 4 to 5 or 3 to 5 whorls. So we can see these buds starting to break. We'd select, 3 to 5 going out, preferably in alternate directions to maximize as much space as possible. So we got that bottom whorl about 3 foot off the ground. You want to strip everything for another 2 feet about. Then you start another whorl, strip everything there about 2 feet. Then you have another whorl all the way up to the top. So you have sort of ideally evenly spaced, separated whorls going all the way up to the top of the tree. Again, looking for that spokes of a wheel kind of spacing structure. This isn't a great example, but you're also looking for, if you have options, you're looking for a good what's called crotch angle. So you don't want something coming up straight up like this. You also, these are actually a little flat. You don't want something pointing straight down like that. What you want is about 45 to 60 or so degree angle of that branch coming off the tree. That will give you enough vigor for that branch, that scaffold to move out. But also, if you have stuff growing straight up, it's just going to want to compete with the leader. It's going to want to be vegetative. Most of the fruit produced on an apple tree will come from flat growth, flatter, weaker growth off of the tree. Strong, upright growth will be just vegetative largely, and that's not what we want. So that's kind of the structure we're looking for as we're going out here. Let's work with Yura and kind of show how we tackle a tree. Okay, so we kind of know the structure of the tree we're looking for now. How do we get to there? So we have these scaffolds. These have been well established for years and years now. But as you can see, there's just excessive vegetative growth on these. So the first thing I like to do is get what's called water sprouts. These are straight up growth, usually very vigorous, like 2 foot of growth a year, maybe more. We want to remove those. So like I said, these haven't been pruned in 3 years? Maybe even more. So this started out life as a water sprout. And as you can see, if you leave those water sprouts for several years, they're just going to try to create a tree of their own right there and shade out everything below it. So getting rid of water sprouts is a good first step and lets you kind of see more of what else you need to take. So when we come to start cutting some of these water sprouts or some of these branches off, you want to look at the base here. You can, if you look close, there's a bunch of lines, and this is called the collar. So if you come up and just snap it above the collar, there are a bunch of dormant buds breaking there. So if you snap it high, you're going to have a bunch of growth just coming right out of there. So I said earlier, one of the reasons we are pruning is to kind of control and deal with plant vigor. When you make a big cut, the tree is going to want to respond. If you cut excessively, the tree is going to respond with excessive growth. You can kind of think of it like water and pipes. So we're cutting a bunch off the top here, but the tree still has the same amount of roots. This tree still has the same capacity to grow to that size. So if you cut a bunch off in 1 year, the tree is going to respond with a bunch of fresh growth, and it's going to look like this vegetative growth. It's not going to be the growth we want. It's not going to be fruit growth. It's going to be vegetative growth that will just serve to shade it out. So you may want to solve all the problems in 1 year, but it is best to prune no more than 1/3 of the tree off in any given year. And ideally, if you're pruning every year, it should be more like 10 to 15% of the tree you're removing, maybe even less. So here's that collar I'm talking about, those lines, and we want a clean cut to speed healing, and we want it tight there so we don't get those buds breaking into growth. So like I said before with that auxin that is controlling the central leader, the same is true on a micro scale of every branch coming out here. So when we make a cut, there's going to be dormant buds that can now respond to that. So we just want to make sure you always want to cut back to something. Like I said before, new pruners, inexperienced pruners, hey, this branch is coming off too far. It's hit me in the face when I'm out. Let's just snip it back. That's going to produce a flush of rapid growth. That's not what we're looking for. So when you decide you don't like a branch, you want to remove it back to something. Either all the way back to where it comes off the scaffold, or in this case, we have another branch maybe that we can kind of select for and get rid of that. Now, looking at this, we might end up taking out that branch entirely. That was just kind of to illustrate how you always want to cut to something. You don't just want to hack something off right in the middle. That's not what we're looking. That'll, like a hedge-like growth, that'll produce short, kind of dense branches. We kind of know what we're looking for. We know how to cut, but it's overwhelming. There's a lot going on here. So what Yura's been doing behind me is going through and getting rid of those water sprouts we were talking about. Those are often the most obvious and easy cuts to find and to just kind of remove to kind of let you know exactly how much you're dealing with in here. Even after those water sprouts are done, you're probably going to have more growth, too dense a growth than what you're looking for. So then you can start looking for branches that are going back into the tree and overlapping branches. So we want every side branch coming off this scaffold to have enough room to do its thing. It doesn't really do us any good to have two branches right on top of each other, shading each other, and taking up light. So that makes this here a prime candidate to take out. But another thing to think about while pruning is the idea of replacement. So as you can see, over the years, as this tree has grown, the weight of the fruit seems to keep pulling this scaffold down. And as the scaffold gets pulled down or ages, it can become where it's not producing the best fruit that we like. So that's where the idea of kind of replacement branches come in. So this, I think we're still going to take it. It's shading too much here, but you have to not take off so much that there's nothing for the future of the tree. This is coming up higher. It will have fresher growth coming off the side, so it may make a good replacement for this as it ages out, but I still think it's overlapping too much, so we'll go ahead and take this one out as well. Yeah, so this is another replacement possibility. It came up a little high, but not too bad. Another thing to remove so it looks like when Chug started this orchard, he started his main branches a little lower maybe than I would, but we don't want to take all this off just because we'd be left with absolutely nothing. So we've decided to keep these around, but we do have other ones starting to break at this lower than desired angle. And this is why right here, you want to start that first whirl further up the tree, because this is grown out. Now it's got fruit, you can see, and the fruit has drugged this branch down. And these apples are going to be no good down here. They're not going to get light. They touch the ground, worms and all sorts of bugs are going to get them. So remove all these branches coming off the main trunk below that 3-foot window we're looking for. So here, I can't reach it now. We have a decision to make. These two are right on top of each other, so we'll take one of those out completely. Probably this one, because if you look on this side of this tree, there's just nothing up there. So Yura's a monkey man. I think he can, we don't even need ladders. Yura can finish this thing just... This one, so here we have a situation where even though, you know, it's not terribly placed, there's a bunch of fruit on there, we could clean it up, but look at how thick this branch is in comparison to the main trunk. That's not what we're looking for. We want that single leader. So when you see a branch coming off that leader that's more than 50% or so of the size of that, you want to get that out of there just to make sure the main vigor is going towards that central leader. Need a thaw? Nope. So there, that tree can breathe. It looks like over here, yeah, that one. So he cut, but he left this nice little one there that's full of fruit, but got rid of something that's creating a lot of bit of shade. So you want to be a little bit more aggressive up top, because you get there's a lot more shade potential the higher up the tree you go. So we have another one here with a bad crotch angle growing straight up that Yura's going to go ahead and take. And then we have an interesting decision with this one going out to Yura. I would clean it up, do exactly what Yura's doing. There's nothing much in that area. There's a there's a bunch of fruit, a shit pot of fruit up there. So we're gonna go ahead and just thin that out. There's a little bit too much going on, but leave a bunch of that fruit. You want to take the stuff that's going straight up mainly, but yeah. And then that's enough. We can leave the rest of that. And then, so I don't know if I can. Here we got two right on top of each other. I'll just take this one. Take that one. I can probably reach it. So that is maybe not what we want to do. We'll come back and clean that up. That's a little bit too much of a nub. Yura selected this one, or I think the other one actually. I think that one's 2 inch. That one. He selected one. You see there's a bunch of side branches coming off it there. But it's not crazy excessive growth. So that looks like a good candidate for a leader. But that means we have to remove everything that's kind of at its level or higher. We want it to stand tallest, to use that auxin to keep everything else in control. And so we need to remove all the other stuff that's impeding that. So now we lost that leader, like I said. And what happened here is this took off like a rocket trying to be the leader. And when you have that excessive growth, you don't have a lot of side branches. See how naked this is there in that last world? So ideally when you're building a tree and the top one isn't actually looking too bad, you want something that's not growing crazy fast. You want something growing a little slower that is putting off a bunch of side branches, because those side branches are where you're going to get all your fruit. This is not what we're looking for, this naked bark. So now we've kind of opened up and you can see a little bit of what we have left. And I want to point out these two branches here. This is what we're looking for. Look at all these fat fruit buds. Maybe they're a little too low. Maybe you'd like this to be a little bit up, but this is pretty much picture perfect of fruit bearing branches. So when you find stuff like this kind of thing is what we're looking to save. The only thing I might do is we have this one going straight up and we have this one that's trying to come over top of this guy. So these type of branches, and they're well spaced away from each other, this is how you're going to get a lot of good fruit. The tools you want to bring with you when you're pruning, depending on the size of the tree, are some hand pruners for tight, smaller branches, some loppers. These will be like 1 inch to 3 inch. And if you're dealing with a very big tree, you may need a handsaw. Also a good idea, you can use a bleach solution or rubbing alcohol to sterilize these tools. And this is important, especially when you're switching between trees, just to minimize the spread of disease. So yeah, you also want them very sharp. You're looking for a clean cut. Minimize that surface area you're exposing. This is just like a cut on you or me. So that's a great area for disease, bacteria, and fungus to attack. So we want it clean. We want it as small as possible. And we want to do it, that's part of the reason we do it in the winter. So there's not really a lot of disease pressure going on right now. As it warms up in early spring, it can callus over and hopefully be healed and ready to go before the diseases are very active. We start pruning in January. That's just due to the large amount of trees we have to get through, but it's a good idea to wait till late winter, early spring. You want the trees dormant, but just keep in mind, again, you're causing the stress. You're opening up a wound on these trees when you prune. So when you do that, the tree becomes more susceptible to winter damage at that site. So if you have a young tree, they're especially vulnerable to winter damage, or certain varieties, more southern apples are more prone to this. It can really increase the amount of winter damage you see. So if you only have a few trees, you want to wait as long as possible while the tree is still dormant before you start pruning. All right, so we've kind of gone through a tree with you guys, gone through some of the basic principles. So just to cover it again, we want to get light to all parts of the tree. We want to maximize airflow, and we want to remove excessive vegetative growth. So we have this tree opened. There's a tendency to want to make a tree perfect in 1 year, and that's kind of what we tried to do here. So we probably ended up taking off more than that 30%. You don't want to go crazy. So as I was saying before, you can think of it like water in a pipe. There's still the same amount of water, but you really reduce the amount of pipe to handle it. So there's going to be pressure, and it's going to explode in the form of those water sprouts. So you don't want to take off too much, but you want it to look something like this. So you want flat growth. You want a lot of fruit buds. You don't want stuff over top of each other, and you don't want stuff growing back into the tree. Again, these trees were started years and years ago with a slightly different system, but you want ideally 3 to 5 bottom whorls, 3 feet up. Those are called your scaffolds on the fruiting table. So 3 feet up, you want 4 or 5 evenly spaced. A couple feet up, you have another whorl. A couple feet up, you have another whorl, and it should be like the spokes of a wheel. Just, you want to make sure that everything has its space to get light and to breathe. And yeah, don't get overwhelmed. Just open up the tree best you can. If you have something that's out of control, take a little bit off every year, selecting for that upright growth. And yeah, have fun out there.